In this lesson, you will learn to deduce information about segments and angles after proving that two triangles are congruent. So in the previous lesson, we learned how to prove triangles are congruent using various methods, such as the side-side-side postulate, angle-side-angle, angle-angle-side, and side-angle-side. Now in this lesson, we're going to use that information, use those postulates and theorems, to then prove that we have congruent angles and segments, which can then be used to prove other things. So what I'm going to do is walk you through one example where you can learn the process to use in order to perform different proofs, and then that process can then be taken to solve or answer any other proof or question that could be asked. So here is our example problem. We're told that AB and CD bisect each other at point E. And then we're trying to prove that AD is parallel to BC. And the question is, how do you prove that? So with the proof, we have our statements column and our reasons column. We always begin with what is given to us, and then we always are going to end with what we're trying to prove. So we can put that information in there to begin with, and the reason for that first statement would be because it is given. Now from here, what I'm trying to do is prove that we have parallel lines, so we can kind of think backwards. To have parallel lines, what we need is some angles to be congruent. Well, they can be alternate interior angles, corresponding angles. Those are the main two that we discussed. And to show that we have congruent angles, we want to show that we have congruent triangles. So the question is, how do we show that we have congruent triangles so that we can show that we have congruent angles, so that we can therefore prove that we have parallel lines? So with that thought process, let's begin. And we are told AB and CD bisect each other. While looking at our definition of bisect, we can conclude that if AB and CD bisect each other, then AE and EB are the same length, and then ED and CD, or CE, would be the same length, because they're being bisected, they're being cut in half. So based off our definition, we can say those two things. So the reason for this one is going to be because of our definition of bisect. Now we have two segments that are congruent, and maybe we can find either another segment or another angle that is congruent. Well, notice that we have vertical angles right here. These two angles that are across from each other are vertical. Vertical angles are always going to be congruent. So we can say that angle AED and angle CEB, or BEC, are congruent. And the reason is because they're vertical angles. So now look, we have the two triangles, one on the left, one on the right, where we have a side angle side congruent to a side angle side over here. And the angle is in between those two sides. So we have congruent triangles. Those triangles are congruent because of the side angle side postulate. And now because those triangles are congruent, we can then conclude that the other angles that are corresponding are also congruent. So the ones that we are concerned about would be angle DAE right here, and then this other angle, angle EBC, right over here. And we could use the other third angle as well. We can also conclude that. If you want to write the proof, you could, but it's not necessary, because once we have those angles, DAE and EBC, are congruent, then notice that those angles are created by segment CB and then BA, and then this other angle, angle DAE, was created also by AB, but then also by segment DA right there. So notice DAE and CBA, those two angles, are alternate interior angles. And alternate interior angles, if they're congruent, would imply that we have parallel lines. So we forgot the reason for number 5. The reason for that was because those are corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. That's what the acronym stands for. But then we can conclude now we have parallel lines because we have alternate interior angles that are congruent. So that implies that we have parallel lines. So that is the process. You prove that we have congruent triangles, and then if we need to go further, we can go further by saying that certain angles and segments are congruent once they are congruent triangles, and then we can prove other things if we need to, such as, in this case, we have parallel lines, or it could be other things as well. So now with that thought process, you can hopefully get most any proof that looks something like this. And that concludes our lesson for today. We will see you next time.